Don't worry about it. That is probably some of the worst advice, in my opinion, that you could give anybody, especially when it comes to something, A, that they're worried about, and B, when it comes to something from a financial standpoint. And the reason I'm bringing this up with you today is that I was recently in a conversation with a very good friend of mine, and we were talking about gold and silver stacking and why I stack it. It's one of my few friends that know about my channel. And anyway, we were talking about everything that I talk about on the channel, and he straight up tells me that I shouldn't worry about it. He said, things always work out. At the end of the day, everyone's going to come out on the other end just fine. And it seemed like one of the stupidest things I'd ever heard. And I know he's going to watch this, and I know he's going to be mad at me for saying it, but don't worry about it is really stupid. Now, that doesn't mean, guys, I'm not telling you that you should sit up at night, stomach cramped, not able to sleep, because you're so concerned about something that it dominates your thoughts to a point that you can't function as a human being. But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't, quote unquote, worry about it. And it certainly doesn't mean that you shouldn't prepare for possible things that are going on, especially when they are staring you straight in the face. Now, what I'm obviously talking about is there is a lot of financial turmoil that a lot of people are worried about, and many people right now are struggling. There's no doubt about it. Many people are struggling right now. I get comments from people all the time about how they have to stop buying their silver because they can't make ends meet, because they have to pay their bills, having trouble keeping up with the cost of everything going sky high right now because inflation is nuts. And it really is. Inflation is, it's not gone away. I'm going to be bringing this up in another video where I talk with someone specifically about inflation on Friday. But inflation is quite high right now. And everyone, no one sees that anymore. We look at the news, and the news doesn't really talk about inflation too much anymore. They don't make a big deal about it. It's always about this or about that. And they talk about how inflation is going down. Let me tell you something about inflation. It's not going down. I mean, the number is lower, but it's not actually going down. I mean, we still have basically a 4% inflation rate. It might be a little bit less than that, might be more. I haven't looked at it, this month, but that's still 4% more than it was last year. And you see all these media reports and they say that it's going down. No, it's not going down. It's just lower. The price of everything is still getting higher. And that's what I think, the media, they try and spin it into a way that it sounds like everything's getting cheaper. Nothing's getting cheaper. Things are still getting more expensive. Everything is still getting more expensive, and it's becoming harder for the everyday American to survive. And honestly, I don't even think those rates are correct, because to me, it really feels like everything's starting to go back up again, even quicker than those CPI reports numbers. I mean, look at the price of fuel lately. Look at the cost of everything lately. You're trying to tell me that inflation is only 4% or 5% or 6% or whatever it may be? I mean, it just sounds BS to me. Now, what caused it to go up? I mean, there's been a million people debating this, but I think about this a lot all the time. I actually did a video a while back. In my video, I specifically talked about how, when they created all this money during the stimulus checks and all that it was going to probably create a good amount of inflation, I should say. And turns out I was right. I said the cost of everything was going to go up. Now, however, while I was right, I certainly don't have a crystal ball, and I didn't realize why it was going to happen the way that it did. What I didn't foresee happening was, people not wanting to work. I just assumed with all this extra money that people would be out spending it, and it would just cause the cost of things to go up. I mean, it's like anything else. If there's more dollars, they become less valuable. And there were a lot more dollars being made, printed out of thin air, put into people's hands so they could go out and spend it. And, there were people that ended up, and I didn't see this happening, but it certainly happened. There were people that ended up not wanting to go back to work after the pandemic had calmed down, and they had this extra money from the stimulus and this extra money from unemployment. And they're like, man, I actually make more in unemployment than I do going back to my job. So as a result, they were fighting for $15 an hour for years, right? You saw the $15 an hour marches. Well, $15 an hour is here. It just didn't come the way they wanted it. It came through companies increasing their wages to get people to come back to work. And now you have all these entry-level jobs. We're talking gas stations, restaurants, fast food restaurants, so on and so forth, that are advertising for employees. They need help. They need labor.
and they still can't fill these jobs. And I just saw this report on the U.S. Chamber of Commerce saying that we're actually in a labor shortage right now, somewhere around 6 million unemployed people versus 9 million available jobs, or 10 million, whatever it may be, somewhere in that range. I don't know the exact numbers, but it's close. Most of those jobs, in my opinion, I mean, what I believe, and keep in mind, I am no jobs market expert. I am not an expert here. I'm just going to tell you what I'm thinking. It looks to me, based on what I see going around, is that all those jobs are at those fast food restaurants, gas stations, so on and so forth, that are still trying to get people to come back to work. And so you have all these job openings, and because they can't find employees, they continue to raise their wages, which of course created $15 an hour, which is what we were just talking about. And as a result, they are also having to raise the price of stuff so that they can make a profit still. The cost of a Big Mac meal is like $10 now. It's unbelievable at McDonald's. Not that you should be eating that. I'm not saying you should. And I'm not saying I don't. Every once in a while I do, unfortunately, eat that. But my point is, regardless of health or not, or whether you should ever put that stuff in your mouth, which you shouldn't, myself included, the point is that the cost of everything is going up as a result of that. And so you need to be prepared in case it continues to get worse, or maybe even worse, we eventually have some sort of financial collapse. But listen, what I'm about to tell you is I don't just prepare by stacking gold and silver, because gold and silver isn't going to be the most important thing if we ever do get there. I mean, it's going to be important, don't get me wrong, but it is not going to be number one on the list. And so I think people really need to think about what they can do to prepare themselves if we really ever do get into a rough situation. One of the things that I like to do outside of survival skills, outside of having backup food and water, outside of the other things that we cannot mention here on YouTube, and you guys probably know what I'm talking about just by saying it. But outside of that, just making sure that if you are in debt, pay it down, get out of it if you can. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about all secured debt. I mean, I understand that if you have a mortgage, that you may not be able to pay it off really quickly. But my point is if you're sitting with a bunch of credit card debt or a bunch of high interest debt, or if you're using your credit cards to go and live beyond your means. So for example, let's say you want to go out and buy something that you don't necessarily need, but you really want, but it's quite expensive and you don't have the cash, so you're going to put it on a credit card. I mean, remember, credit cards generally run with very high interest. And so that $1,000 or $2,000 item that you buy that you're going to enjoy, no doubt. And I'm not telling you that you shouldn't enjoy your life, but just keep in mind that you're going to pay way over what the cost of the item is if you can't pay that credit card off immediately. And I see a lot of people, actually probably my friend included, who hates that I'm making this video. I see a lot of people that are putting themselves in credit card debt by buying things that they don't necessarily need. Now, I've also seen on the other side, and again, we're going to cover more of this in another video, so stick with me. But I've also seen on the other side of the token people that are unfortunately having to use their credit cards and get into credit card debt to keep up with inflation, to keep paying for the things that they need. And we're talking food, gas, paying their bills, so on and so forth. And for those people, I wish that I was smart enough to tell you what to do. And I do hope that it turns around. I think there's a lot of people out there, I see comments on the channel all the time, people saying that, oh, this needs to happen, the reset needs to happen. And what I tell you is that I hope that it doesn't, because so many people are going to hurt, because there's so many people out there that aren't prepared for that to happen. Don't make yourself one of those. Make sure you're in a good position. And that's all I have to really say about that. Guys, I'm going to do another video. I already kind of hinted at it, talking about gold and silver and how it's not going to be the most important thing if we ever do get there. And I want you to do me a favor and make sure you subscribe and watch out for that video. And also just a huge thank you for watching my videos in general and supporting the channel. Do me a favor, hit that like button and leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. And we will see you next time, guys. Thank you so much.